my inclination is to say, let's not be in such a hurry to get these kids into a game. In fact, I made this note to myself this morning. I was awake half the night last night thinking a little bit about some of our conversations. Let us not be in such a hurry to get our kids into a game.
Whether you live north, east, west, or south, the best fast pitch info comes from the coach's mouth. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast with your hosts, Jay Bolden and Ken Kraus.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to the From the Coach's Mouth podcast. This is Ken Kraus here as always with the man who puts the in into Indiana, Mr. Jay Bolden. Jay, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Ken. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one before. So you're just getting wittier and wittier as you get older and older, buddy, which I absolutely appreciate. So I'm doing good, man. Got to share a little story. Kid played her first tournament this past weekend. Team did really good. We went 3-2 on the weekend. Rotated everybody in, Ken. Everybody batted, switched positions as much as we could. They're 11 years old. We're trying to develop them. It was a really good weekend. She struggled a little bit at the plate early and then started to put it together at the end. It was their first tournament, knocking the rust off. But honestly, it was a great weekend for them. Super proud of them. They're all getting better and their softball IQ is growing. So how about you? What did you do this past week or weekend?
Nothing. But no, I'm just kidding. But I did want to comment on you. You know, you're very wimpy there, rotating all the kids, letting them play, letting everybody bat. You're ruining their chances at a college scholarship, Jay.
Yeah, you know, I saw so many of them this weekend at that C-level tournament that we played in. I mean, they were like lining up to talk to the players after the game. Ken, I couldn't believe it. You know, I think I saw Patty Gasso there. I think she flew in from Oklahoma to go to the tournament and was there waiting to talk to some kids. Yeah. But yeah, no, none of them were there. And you know what? It was a great weekend. And I talked, you know, I'm not the head coach. I talked to our head coach. I said, you know what? Look at this weekend. This is a great weekend. There are no parents here to talk to you after any of these games. What a great weekend. Everybody was happy. Everybody played and everybody got better. I think next year we'll get a little more serious, but right now, like, we're just letting them play and the kids are having fun and it's fun to see them learn and grow.
Yeah, well, that's the key, Jay. That's what it's all about. I'm glad that everybody was in there. They had the chance to play, find out if they like it, get a chance to figure out kind of, you know, what they can do. You guys got a chance to see what else to work on. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
You know what was awesome, Ken, is we have 3 pitchers on our team. Every kid went 2 innings. Everybody got a chance to develop, to work on new pitches, to do the things we needed to do. And you know what? We still ended up with a winning record on the weekend. We went 3-2. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Not that the wins are all that important at this level, but I think that is important just from the standpoint that they got a chance to see that this works and it's fun and everybody got a chance to contribute.
Absolutely. And I was super excited. I work with all 3 of our pitchers, actually 4. We have one that's she's a little younger, but still working. So I work with all 4 of them. They got an opportunity to work on things in game to help them develop with those pitches. But enough of me rambling. Speaking of pitching, we have a mentor of ours that is on today who is absolutely helped us tremendously. Give some people a little bit of background on this person. I'm so excited to dig in today and cannot wait for people to listen to what this person's going to say.
All right. Well, we are really excited to speak with today's guest because he has not only been one of the premier figures in pitching in both men's and women's fast pitch over the last 30 plus years, he's also a personal friend. As a pitcher himself, this Northern California native had a very successful career playing at the highest levels of the men's game. Among his many accomplishments was being named MVP of the 1967 Amateur Softball Association, now USA Softball, Men's National Open Division Championship while earning runner-up honors with Fairchild Falcons out of Mountain View, California. Our guest was also a member of 3 national championship teams, participated in 3 Olympic sports festivals, which used to be held in non-Olympic Games years, and was a 3-time All-American pitcher. During that time, he became an accredited teacher and taught for 10 years at Los Altos High School, but he never lost his passion for fast-pitch softball and eventually left academics to become one of the world's most successful fast-pitch softball pitching instructors, primarily on the women's side of the game. For more than 30 years, he has helped hundreds of pitchers perfect their games and go on to play at all levels of collegiate softball, including 1 Gatorade National Softball Player of the Year, 2 Gatorade State Softball Players of the Year, and multiple All-Region and All-State Players of the Year in California at a time when the state was the ultimate hotbed for fast-pitch softball. One of his best-known students was UCLA's Angelica Jelly Selden, who led her team to the championship series as a freshman and went on to play professional softball in Italy before becoming a collegiate pitching coach and successful private instructor herself. He is also the author of the popular Wix Wednesdays posts on Facebook, which we certainly look forward to reading each week. For all his accomplishments and accolades, however, our guest still remains a student of the game and is likely to ask questions and solicit opinions from other instructors as he is to offer his own. We can't wait to speak with him, so let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm From the Coach's Mouth podcast welcome to the one and only Rich Balswick.
Yes, sir.
Welcome, Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Welcome.
We're really happy to have you here, as we said, and very excited to tap into that wealth of knowledge of yours.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get started, Rich. We asked this of just about all of our guests. How did you get started in fast pitch in general, and even more importantly, pitching specifically? How did it all start for Rich Balswick?
Well, the first thing I think about is when I was about 9 years old. Little League Baseball had not quite got started yet, and so we were actually introduced to softball to start with. And so I had an uncle that played on a local town league. You know, men's fast pitch was pretty popular. This is going all the way back to like 1949, 1950, if you can believe that. Somehow or another, I'm still only about 35 years old. That's how I was introduced. I can still see the uniforms that the men wore when they played in those days, and for some reason, the game just got a hold of me, and I pitched for our local church as an adult, as a 14-year-old. Fortunately, there was a men's fast pitch guy that was in that area that played at the highest level, who I eventually was introduced to when I was in high school. And so I got some foundations early, you know, especially in the realm of the rise ball and drop that, you know, has served me well through the years. I didn't have to overcome bad habits because of this guy's, professionalism, et cetera. And I just evolved at that point, playing in local town leagues, and eventually got a tryout the very first fall that I was a high school coach at Los Altos, as you had mentioned. That was 1964. I saw my first men's national tournament in Sunnyvale, which is right next to Los Altos, back in the fall of 64, watching people pitch like Herb Dudley and so forth. Saw a rise ball that I had never seen before, and a changeup that I had never seen before. And so it was like I lived in an environment where it was, you know, I look back on it and it was just a flood of some of the most excellent information you could possibly imagine. And it's what breaks my heart today is that, you know, so many kids get started on the wrong foot. And I was baptized in a way that helped me not have to overcome, you know, some real grooved habits and so forth.
I think that's important.
Fortunate to get a tryout with Fairchild Falcons, and it led me to some other teams that were quite good. I suffered by having to play on the better teams.
So what were some of those other teams you played on?
Well, the thing that's crazy is that and I look back on this, and I hate to admit this, but I started chasing money a little bit underneath the table and that kind of stuff, and bounced around way more than I should have. The Fairchild Falcon organization was fantastic, and I made a mistake of leaving them after my first year, which was in the season of 1965. But they picked me up in 66 and and I ended up pitching in my first national tournament, having been picked up by them and so forth. So I'll stop my answer right there.
Okay. All right. So we saw you talking about working with a Major League Baseball pitcher when you were young. Were you a baseball pitcher as well?
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting sidelight. Some years ago now, I was teaching a girl how to pitch who had been taught by her mother, and we were going month after month after month, and she was so fixed in her habits of locking her arm and forcing her hand through the release area and so forth. And I must have worked with her for over a year and never made one speck of progress. And it caused me just incredible grief. And I felt like the good Lord reminded me of an experience that I had when I was in high school. A Major League Baseball pitcher came to town and was working with the pitchers. And as I replay my experience and listening to this Major League pitcher, I was either a freshman or sophomore in high school. I look back on it and I realized that all I did when he was there, I mean, here we are talking, about excellence personified, and I'm just waiting for him to stop talking so I can get the ball in my hands and back and throw it again. As it turned out, it was probably one of the bigger mistakes I ever made. I ended up having elbow problems and so forth. And by the time I was a sophomore in college, I couldn't pitch anymore because my mechanics were so poor. And that's part of, what kind of opened the door for me on the softball pitching side. So here I have an opportunity to listen to somebody that knows what he's talking about. And I was probably more unteachable than the girl that I was complaining about. And I couldn't affect. And that really kind of sets the tone a little bit of a few things that are in my mind as I talk with you guys today, is that how much goes on in the realm, and you probably know this better than I do, Jay, when kids come to college and they're in their certain grooves of how to pitch a ball. It's really kind of even dangerous to play around with how much you try to change this, that, or whatever. And I'm just so concerned about. I was a coach at Los Altos High School in 1972 when Title IX was introduced, and I was the first softball coach at Los Altos High School. And I saw this flood of need for pitching coaches back in 1972. And it was mostly fathers with baseball backgrounds that were trying to teach their daughters how to pitch. And you guys know as well as I do how all of that really got the game off on a very distorted footing because of the way the mechanics of pitching were interpreted back in those days. And it still lingers very strong.
Yeah. So you're talking like the hello elbow mechanics and that sort of thing?
All of that, yeah. And mainly, in my mind, there is a way in which in sports, there's a level of relaxation that needs to go on in the realm of a ball being released. And so much of what's being taught is a forced snap and a forced effort forward with the arm. And those types of habits get so ingrained. And the latest thing I've commented on a little bit is that on the rise ball, kids are being taught to turn their wrists like this and their thumb travels with the ball and they're trying to spin the ball backwards, et cetera. And I don't know how much detail to get into with all of that, but it gets so distorted. And so we have trouble in the game really identifying what we're talking about because you have announcers that aren't helping at all, it seems to me, in so many situations with terminology on pitches and complementing spins and things like that, and it's pure bullet spin and all that, as you guys know.
Yeah, I think
forgot the question, I think.
No, it's okay. Just stay with that, because we're going to get into that too, Rich. I want people to hear, because I don't want any forward effort when I'm teaching kids. I don't want it. I don't want to see that shoulder turning to the catcher, because if the shoulder's turning to the catcher, the hand is turning to the catcher, the arm is turning to the catcher. Now we're throwing bullet spins because the thumb is involved. And that is something I learned from you, Rich, many, many, many years ago. And I try to model that with all of my kids. And so let's get into that. But I want to get back into your background just a little. I promise you, we're going to dig into the bullet spins and the forward effort and all that. I can't wait to get into that. But I want people to know a little bit more about your background, because I want to ask you about you being a pitcher, Rich. What was your strength as a pitcher? Were you a power pitcher, or were you more of that movement guy, or was it a combination of both of that? What was it? What were you like?
There was some level of combination. There's no question that when I first broke into playing at a national level, I was probably throwing the ball as hard as anybody in the world was, and for a year or two there. But in my own experience in playing against the Clearwater Bombers, that very first year that I was ever at a national tournament, I started out the very first game. I still remember striking out 18 of 21 batters that I faced. And I wasn't thinking about the batter's swing angle or anything like that. I was just reaching back and getting it, and it was pretty dominant with the rice ball and mixed in and dropped. Never bothered with a changeup. And that series, and I mentioned something about this, I think, on the internet. That series, I ended up giving up a home run to somebody by the name of Ron Weathersby that pitched for Clearwater Bomber, or hit for Clearwater Bombers. And I came up with a changeup that next winter, and pitching for Fairchild Falcons again at the national tournament in 1967. And we beat Clearwater, who were the defending champions, twice. And they couldn't score off of me. But I would say that by that time already, I was more of a pitcher than I was a thrower. And I was beginning to understand what hitters were doing, and I started recognizing where the bat was in relationship to the ball. Every time the ball went by the hitter, I knew whether the bat was on time or over the ball or under the ball, and it affected how I pitched. I always was pretty much in charge of what I threw because of my understanding. And again, I got a lot of help back in those days. Some guys that had played for years, a Stanford graduate that helped me a lot. I went into a gym, practiced an hour a day, 5 days a week. That very first year I was a high school coach. I don't know why I didn't get fired. So there was a lot of preparation. I recognized through the help of somebody else who was a catcher that a ball needed to be spinning backwards to be a rise ball. And we call that 12-6 spin, where that line is. And my rise ball jumped huge, even though I was, throwing it, rather fast. So that's, kind of how I got started. And I recognized that I was learning to release the ball by letting it go rather than forcing it. And so there was never a thought of trying to turn the ball and twist it. I recognized, especially after I coached for a number of years, how positioning the thumb was so important in getting the ball to have a proper axis and allowing the ball to slide under my thumb. And when kids are trying to throw the ball and they're twisting it like this and their thumb travels with the ball hits the thumb and squibs off all the time, and they're not getting backspin, and the announcers are still calling it a rise ball. The advantage of that particular release, though, is that when the ball goes off the end of the hand, it gets this kind of rotation as it's coming out, and it's got a great big circle in the back of the ball. So when I watch some of these college pitchers, I recognize that they're visualizing the ball coming out backwards out of their hand, but in reality, it's falling off the end of their hand, and they don't know what it's supposed to look like when it comes out. So how can you throw something if you don't know how it needs to come out of your hand? And it's something that if you try to do too much with it, you mess it up. In other words, you're letting the energy of your arm and your hand come through the release area, and you use that whip and lag as a way of allowing and causing the fingers to drive through and under the ball and up, rather than trying to turn the doorknob. I hate turn the doorknob terminology, but it's tied to the concept of letting it go. Even the golf swing is misunderstood. When you try to hit a golf ball, you're creating tension in that swing in such a way that you can't repeat it very well, and you actually slow the club head down. And a lot of the trying process in developing speed on a softball pitch gets compromised because of those same well-meaning efforts. I could go on and with illustrations between golf and pitching a softball.
I think one of the things that I've talked to the kids before about when they're trying to throw the rise ball, and I use the idea of a golf club, like a pitching wedge, that's fixed, right? It's fixed. So when you bring it through, it just kind of chops in, it gets underneath there, the ball comes off, and that's how it gets the backspin to go high and to carry and then to sit down on the green. And, I think it's the same thing you're talking about here, is that, rather than trying to twist it, which is going to automatically turn your hand forward, you just want to hold it in place and let the ball come out. Is that the idea?
For sure. And when you're throwing it, if you understand what you're doing as you're getting inward rotation, we hear that IR concept taught a lot. Well, when I throw a drop, I'm rotating inward and my thumb comes down in front of the ball, and my thumb is pointing towards the ground as the ball leaves, and the thumb is really kind of at 12 o'clock as I'm letting go. And so there's an inward rotation that's happening naturally. And too often kids are releasing the ball as young kids where their thumb is staying out here at 2 o'clock and so forth. So when they let go of the ball's got this angle on it all the time.
It's got a cut, yep.
That's why the pitch gets hit all the time. And I see that happening still with numerous hard-throwing kids. And they don't realize that the bottom would come out of this thing if they allowed the hand to rotate over. Same thing with rise ball. If the thumb position gets more sideways and the ball is able to come out with backspin like this because of the thumb being outward rather than being pointed towards home plate, there's an inward rotation, but my thumb is still sideways as I'm snapping through. So whether I'm throwing a drop or rise ball, the position of the thumb is often influencing the purity of the axis more than we realize. And so I talk about the thumb quite a bit with kids, even though the thumb isn't throwing it at all. All the thumb is doing is supporting the ball until the fingers take over.
Yes.
Et cetera.
Yep.
Rich, and then, I want to bring this point up too. I'll have kids in college, they'll go away to college, at Division I, they'll come home and they'll say, yeah, coach worked on my drop ball. She wants me to get all my weight on my front foot and push the ball down. I mean, what where, why? And so she'll throw that ball, Rich, and the ball just goes straight down on an angle. And sure, it goes low, but there is no break on that ball whatsoever. And the ball, like you said, doesn't fall out. It just moves downward on an angle. But this is at the highest level. Coach is telling kids to get all their weight on their front leg and push the ball downward. I mean, right there, that's forward effort that we don't want. And so I'll show a video of Mike White throwing his drop ball. He's got his weight predominantly on his back, and he's coming over that ball like crazy. And that ball is dropping probably 8 inches with a break in it. So what are your thoughts about some of the things in college right now that the college pitching coaches?
Well, I see that all the time. And announcers are always talking about how important it is to keep the ball down, to keep the ball in the yard. Well, the way a lot of these kids are throwing their fastball with the compromised spin, and the ball just kind of sits there instead of really, really dropping like it potentially can, the ball is approaching the bat on the flat side, and this launch angle swing, the bat is on plane with that fastball, and you see kids hitting pitches that are ankle high out of the yard because it's right in line with them dropping that shoulder the way they do on that swing. And they wonder why the ball keeps jumping out of the yard on them when their pitches are on plane with the bat. And I can tell coaches are calling pitches without a slightest clue of what, I mean, obviously there's exceptions to what I'm talking about here, but it's amazing to me how often balls are being thrown right into the wheelhouse of a pitch. They were trying to get Ella, I guess her last name is, at Oklahoma, down and away. That was right in her, perfect cooked area for her to just launch the ball out of the yard. So there's just an awful lot of ignorance that's tied to the, and so kids are afraid because they're not being taught how to pitch. You can tell. I mean, I watched a game between Oklahoma and Texas just last weekend, I guess it was. It was a good game, but it took them 3 hours. And I swear half the batters had 3 and 2 counts on them, because even as well as they were pitching in a lot of ways in that game, they're still, you could tell that they were afraid to throw strikes. They didn't know how to get the ball to move the way they needed to. Here's the top 2 teams in the country. Now, again, in general, I want to be totally complimentary to those 2 programs as far as pitching is concerned. The pitching coach at Oklahoma is fantastic. And, of course, Mike White, who knows more about pitching than Mike White, and so forth. And yet his girl, his main pitcher, I'm not going to mention names, the reason why she gets in trouble is because when she lets go of the ball on her rise ball, it's not spinning backwards when it comes out of her hand. I can tell that when the ball is being released, it's falling off the end of her hand, and you see this big circle behind the ball, and she's throwing it fast, and when she gets it in the right area and the hitter's not anticipating the pitch, she has some pretty good success. But, what would that pitch be? And I've been tempted to call Mike, but, I don't want to assume those types of things. And when I watch that girl pitch, maybe she needs to come up with something that actually spins backwards, and just the focus of getting underneath the ball and coming under it to spin it backwards will automatically reduce the speed of the ball, because you're not getting the same forces through the back end of the ball, and it becomes an off-speed rise ball that's actually maintaining an upward inclination. That brings a point to me. Do you guys think that a rise ball actually rises the way a drop drops, in a sense?
My opinion, no. I mean, I've seen it, enough things that where you look at it, you put it on video, and it's more of a thing. It actually, what I've seen is that it levels off. However, I will also say that what I believe happens is that the ball acts in a way that the brain doesn't understand. And so there's like a little gap in there. So it appears to jump up because the brain expects the ball to start coming down at a certain point. It looks like it's going to do a certain thing. And then all of a sudden it didn't do what it was supposed to do. There's a little glitch there. Then the brain tries to catch up, and all of a sudden the ball is higher than it was expecting. And then it looks like it jumped. Because I know I've certainly seen it.
When I was first coaching and teaching kids, of course, to get the ball to spin actually backwards, I would be only, 15 feet or so in front of the father, illustrating the rotation of the ball and throwing the ball really quite softly. And I actually hit fathers in the forehead more than once with the ball, because they were so inclined to anticipate the ball sinking as it was being thrown, even that short distance, that the eyes wouldn't track the ball.
Yep.
And so kids are making outs because they're still imagining the ball, or anticipating a sinking action. So the bullet spin reduces reduces the dropping action of that pitch. And as a result, it's successful, especially when they're able to throw it, exceedingly fast, in the high 60s and low 70s. Even when you see girls throwing in the mid 70s, if the hitter is sitting on that so-called rise ball and they're able to anticipate the timing of the swing, they still have a chance to be competitive. And that girl that throws that fast is learning to change speeds a little bit more and is having more success, and she's not trying to throw it 80 miles an hour anymore.
Time, Blue.
Hey, Jay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important do you think brush contact is for pitchers?
It's pretty high up there, Ken. Probably a 10, since it's hard to get maximum speed or accuracy without it.
Yeah, I agree. But have you ever had a student who struggled to get good, light brush contact?
Sure, all the time, in fact, especially when they've been taught hello elbow and are trying to throw around their hips, or they're sliding their hips out of the way doing that crazy ninja move.
So what do you do when you run into that situation? Keep railing on them until they get it right?
I used to do that a lot, but then I learned about a product called Pitch Squeak, Ken.
Pitch Squeak? What's that?
It's a cool little armband with a squeaker inside of it.
Like a dog toy?
Yeah, kinda.
So how does it work?
Well, you slip the armband onto the pitcher's forearm and you set it so the squeaker is where the brush contact should happen. Then, when the pitcher goes into release, she tries to get it to squeak, like this. If she makes it happen, she got brush. If there's no sound, she knows immediately and can make a correction.
Wow, cool. So she gets immediate audible as well as tactile feedback.
Oh, there you go again, showing off with those big and technical words again. But yeah, she can feel it and hear it.
Does it really work?
You bet it does. I use it with my students all the time, and it helps them learn how to get brush contact pretty quickly if they practice with it.
Sounds neat. Where can I get one?
Oh, it's easy, Ken. Just email support@pitchsqueak.com, and Jason, the inventor of it, and a Polygirl certified pitching coach himself, will ask you how many you want and send them right out.
I'll do that today. Thanks, Jay. What's that address again?
Oh, you bet, Ken. It's support@pitchsqueak.com. One more time for those of you who are listening, support@pitchsqueak.com. And don't forget to mention in the email that you heard about it right here on From the Coach's Mouth podcast, and you'll receive 10% off.
Play ball.
A question I would ask you guys is that when I'm swinging at a rise ball, do I want to be trying to hit it with a level bat? Do I want to use the launch angle swing to hit that rise ball? Or do I want to get my swing in a position where the bat head has a chance to stay above the ball? If I'm facing a pitcher that's throwing a lot of upward angled pitches that we're calling rise balls. And again, when they're throwing the ball 70 miles an hour, and that ball is leaving without pure overspin that makes it sink. A true drop starts on an upward trajectory more than people realize. And if you actually tried to throw a drop level to begin with and you have good spin on it, the ball won't reach home plate. So a lot of times the difference between a drop and a rise ball is that a rise ball is taking off on the same trajectory as the drop is, but it doesn't have backspin on it. And if you're throwing it fast enough, gravity doesn't have enough chance to really cause it to turn over all that much. And it just reduces the steepness of the upward angle as a result of the lack of drop spin. So a lot of those pitchers that are throwing in the high 60s are creating a level of differentiation between what they call their fastball and their rise ball because of those types of what I call, in a way, a compromise in the spin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say this too, Rich. I mean, all what you're saying there is spot on. And also, too, I think when you're talking about the drop ball and the rise ball kind of coming out at the same kind of level, it's because the mechanics on that pitch are predominantly the same outside of how you're spinning the ball and how the ball comes off your hand. right? And I think what we see nowadays is that's getting so muddied down, right? And so confused because of forward effort, because people are turning the hand, forcing the hands, the wrist flicks, the snap the wrist, right? Those are forceful actions instead of letting the ball come out the way it's supposed to with the grip that you have. But I think the consistency piece is everything is the same until it isn't, which means the mechanics on the rise ball have these little adjustments that are need to be made to make that ball spin right. But every time you throw a pitch, those mechanics should be almost identical. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, without question. And that's part of my concern about the way the spin is being taught, because it's impossible. There's too much activity going on in a short distance that you can't repeat it consistently, And so one of the things I was mentioning, that I find myself experimenting a little bit with my teaching on pitching is that, and I have relationships with some other coaches that buy into this idea that if you spend too much time moving too slowly, that you eventually are reducing the chance of kids developing, top speed on their pitches. Well, I'm of the inclination that if you allow kids to just carelessly let go of the ball too much too soon in their development, that you start creating a monster in terms of what they need to learn to do to eventually become a pitcher. My inclination is to say, let's not be in such a hurry to get these kids into a game. In fact, I made this note to myself this morning. I was awake half the night last night thinking a little bit about some of our conversations. Let us not be in such a hurry to get our kids into a game. There's, enough pressure. The good Lord himself didn't start his ministry till he was 30 years old. So there was a lot of preparation going on in his life for eventually what he was doing. So it's an area where I kind of want to try to influence the game if I can, and especially love the opportunity to kind of bounce this off of you guys. Maybe we're spending too much time too early in the process to explode off the pitching rubber. All we're thinking about is maximizing the velocity of the hips moving forward, et cetera, to create velocity on the ball, when what I really need is to understand what my exact posture is at the point I let go of the ball and how the ball is going to exit my hand at that point, and teach the exiting action of a pitch with the energy of an arm relaxing and falling and coming through, and either rotating over the ball or coming under the ball. It's still an inward rotation that's either creating 12-6 spin forward or 12-6 spin backwards. And of course, there's more than one way to read the spin axis. On this ball here, I have dots on the sides, and I have a line that's going over the center of the ball. But in reality, if I'm throwing a good rise ball, a terminology that some people are using, and you guys probably use this, is that the axis of a spin is 3 o'clock with that dot, and 9 o'clock with that dot would be the same as 12-6 spin as a line going backwards here. And so I also can be measuring and so forth. And I try to teach this very early with kids, is to get them to understand what the ball needs to look like in the air. When I first moved back here to Idaho here 3.5 years ago, I had some girls that knew how to spin the ball to some degree when they were 3 feet away from their catcher, but they only did that for a little while, and the next thing I know, they're 40 feet away throwing full speed, and they're wondering why the ball won't rise or drop, so to speak. And so there needs to be a very gradual education that's going on. And I think there's a way in which I instead of depending on machines to tell me whether I'm getting my spin right, is that I develop an eyesight and vision I can tell whether somebody's a pitcher by just walking up to a backstop while a game's going on. And I know within 2 or 3 pitches, usually just one, whether they know how to pitch or not. Because of how the ball looks, I can tell they don't know what the heck they're doing. Because the ball has too much of this, too much of a gyro spin, or it has too much of a tilt in the axis. And both of those things, again, there's a lot of criticism that coaches are spending too much energy in trying to get the axis of the spin right and making it perfect. Well, I don't know what perfect is really, except that I know when something is spinning efficiently.
Well, Rich, and I think that, what you're talking about here goes back to a larger issue in the game, which is there's way too much emphasis on games and playing 150 games during the year and not enough time being spent working on some of these things. And not just in pitching, but, fielding, throwing, hitting, base running, and pretty much anything within the game itself. And, it does definitely show up in pitching. Just real quickly, I'm fanatical about spins. I got that from you. I know that if I ever had a student pitching and you walked by, I'd certainly want you to say, yeah, Ken, you're doing a good job, not just shaking your head and walking away and saying,
me too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I will sit there, especially with a kid that's locking out the arm, pushing the ball down the backside. So we've got to fix that first. Got to fix the end. Otherwise, everything else that comes before that doesn't really matter. And, sometimes it'll take them 3 or 4 lessons to get the idea to overcome a habit.
Do you guys spend any time teaching kids to learn to read the swing of the batter?
Oh, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. As a pitch caller in college.
If you teach them right.
Yeah. For me specifically, I see that's the first thing I'm looking for, Rich, when I'm watching batters. What's the first swing look like? Where are they at in the box? How can we attack that swing? Can we, like you said, can we be above the barrel? Can we be below the barrel? How do we attack? Do we need to change speeds here? And then trying to bring it. And I will talk to kids all the time, Rich, when I'm doing a lesson with a kid, and let's say they're a little bit more advanced and we're starting to get into the IQ of the game. I do a lot of work where I talk about tunneling. I want everything to look the same because to me, I want the batter to think you're throwing a fastball until you're not. And so I talk to them. The batter's not going to wait till the ball's early on them to decide to swing or not. They're going to look for that ball out here, right, in this kind of last third of the pitch. And that's where I need the ball there to make the break. And so we'll talk about if their swing is doing this, we're going to attack this way. We can go a ball away. We can go a ball above. So, yeah, I think that's important. And that's softball IQ. I think those are some of the things we're missing today in today's game is that softball IQ of where's the batter's weakness and how can we attack it, right? I think that's huge, huge. But I want to switch gears for you real quick, Rich, because I want to get your opinion on something here. Ken and I talk about this all the time. What are your new thoughts about all the crow hopping is being purposefully taught to female pitchers today? Are you in favor of it? Do you see issues or what are your thoughts? Because there are, as we know, there are instructors out there that are full on teaching a leap. What's your thoughts on that?
I know what you're asking me. I wish I had a good answer. Well, I think I have a pretty good answer. When that type of emphasis exists, one of the things that I've discovered is that there is a way in which that front side can only handle so much force. And if you start getting more speed off of the rubber going forward into that front side, and that front side starts breaking down, that in itself, should be discouraging, this idea of trying to leap, totally outside the circle and everything else. The way a lot of these coaches are teaching, there's a girl now that's pitching in Texas that's still young in high school, that when I first saw her and met her dad, she was just being, leaping off the planet. And the only way she could land without hurting herself, in my opinion, is that she actually was using her push-off foot as a way of connecting to the ground slightly ahead of her stride foot. Well, the moment that happens, that's reducing the shock value of that front side to maximize efficiency in a pitch. So there's some things that are going on there that I think are more compromised than people realize. I need to throttle back a little bit where I don't have that need to even have the need to reset that stride or the push-off foot and in a way, I don't care whether that push-off foot is getting airborne as much as I do it being at a tempo that the front side can handle with balance and stability and consistency. Have I touched on anything there?
Yeah, that's great.
I have a lot of fun with that. It's crazy how it's getting overemphasized in such a way. And I don't know about you, but some of the issues that kids are struggling with in their low back is happening because they're creating more force into the front side than their back can handle. And it takes, some real strength building to be able to stabilize. Because if you're not stable on that front side, it's affecting your movement and your control and it's affecting the effectiveness of your whole pitch. And there's too much effort being made or unwisely. And I think we forget what the spirit of the rule is. Why is the pitching rubber there? The pitching rubber is supposed to be our starting point in some form. The moment the ball of that push-off foot connects to the ground ahead of the landing foot landing, that is a crow hop. And the pitcher is getting an unfair advantage with that. But at the same time I say that, I recognize that there's still only so much that they can do. I mean, I think to myself, well, if I can replant that right foot a second time and somebody makes that legal, actually makes it legal in the rule book, why can't I bounce a second time on it? And a third time? Pretty soon, I'm halfway to home plate before I let go of the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, and at that point, you don't have to be too fast.
Discover what the spirit of the rule is, and let's stay within that framework rather than trying to find a way a pitcher to give them kind of a false permission and a false security.
Well, Rich, too, and I think that, when you look at that, the way you're landing, our bodies are built for protection, not performance. That's a priority. And if your body senses that your front leg can't handle all the energy that you're trying to throw into it, it's going to slow you down. And that's going to throw off your timing. You were talking about tempo. I think it's going to throw off your timing. It's going to
posture.
Yeah, your posture. It's going to make you slow yourself down. You're not going to get that quick energy transfer that you need to sling the arm through. Now you are going to have to throw more with your arm because you're not getting that from the legs. Would you agree?
That's good. That's good, Ken. I really like what you're saying right there.
See, I've been paying attention.
You have taught us well, Rich. You have taught us well.
Well, wouldn't you guys also agree that, and this is what happens with the way, so many different things in this world. But when you think you know something, which so many people do about pitching, they become the most difficult person to teach because they think they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pray that the three of us understand today that we don't know it all. There's still a way in which we can get better, and we can create a smoother path to preparation for a game and so forth. I just think it's so sad when these girls are 8 years old and they're being thrown into a game 2 weeks after the first time they ever have a softball in their hand and things like that. And the types of pressures that they deal with and, their need for, their own identity to be developed with some level of success. And they're running into all of this correction. And, what's the hurry? Let's let them play. If you leave a kid to themselves, what are they going to do when they throw the ball on their hand? They're going to bend over and they're going to push it forward. I mean, that's what any of us will do.
Right.
Well, I want to enter into a little girl's life where I'll ask them to show me how they're going to throw the ball underhand, and they'll 100% of them will bend over and push the ball forward. Well, what I want to do is say, let's take a look at another position that you could possibly be in, whereas you guys know that arm just naturally rests against the side of your hip, and when you're in that position, your hand is actually forward a little bit. And if you could just get them to understand that when they're letting go of the ball, don't pull your arm down and push it forward. Just allow the hand to lag behind the elbow and allow the fingers to roll forward, and you'll start them on a path where they don't have to unlearn something. Does that make sense?
100%.
We're not trying to get ready for the game in 2 days. We're trying to get started with a skill that will serve them well. I don't know how we can cause that to happen, but usually that, wouldn't you agree that that's what's happening with most 8-year-olds?
Sure.
Yes.
They're throwing into the fire.
Right.
Yep.
Right. They're just trying to aim it, because everybody's telling them, just throw strikes. We can't defend walks. Instead of, hey, just do the best you can.
A walkathon instead of a game.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll always remember a situation that I had years ago where I had an opportunity to work at some length with the town league in Sebastopol, which is a little town next to Santa Rosa, years ago. And I had an opportunity to spend time with the girls that were pitching in that league in the 12-year-old range. And there were 8 teams in the local town league, and all 12 pitchers, probably not all 12, but most of them, had a sound foundation. And you cannot believe the quality of games that were being played in a little town, because the pitchers had enough time to understand what it meant to be a pitcher, and it wasn't a walkathon, and the kids were having a lot of fun. Nobody's having fun when you got walkathons going on. And all of that could be fixed if people would just use some common sense and do some planning ahead of time.
So, Rich, I guess looking at it then, you've had so many. You've had Gatorade Players of the Year, All-State, All-Conference, all these other things. So we tend to think of you as working with all these really high-level kids. But it sounds like you've got a lot of passion for, hey, let's get these kids in when they're 8, 9, or 10. You'd almost rather get one of those coming in than a kid who's got bad mechanics that's been fairly successful, but that you have to break down and start over. I mean, do you like working with the littles?
I haven't been doing much coaching since I moved here to Eagle, Idaho. But you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I can't think of anything more satisfying than helping somebody transition from knowing zero about pitching a ball and giving them some level of preparation where there's a foundation that's being built that's giving them a chance to not hurt themselves, number one. 2, develop the ability to repeat something and then understand what it is that they're trying to repeat in terms of the simplicity of the axis of spin and so forth, and then understand the reason why they are doing that. Why are you making or putting energy into the direction of a ball in terms of how it spins? They don't really relate to the contest that they're having with a bat that's coming towards it, and how the spin on the ball is affecting. And of course, I believe very strongly in the vertical emphasis of a pitch because of the difficulty of squaring up to it. When a ball is moving sideways, especially the way kids are trying to throw curveballs, they're trying to throw curveballs with bullet spins, and the ball, all it is a slight angle. And if they leave the ball over the plate, it's real easy for the bat to be squared up to the ball. And I'm not necessarily trying to teach kids to strike everybody out, but I call the game in such a way that I'm doing all I know to do to keep the hitter from having an easy time of squaring up to the ball. my goal as a pitcher as I got older and understood pitching is that I wanted them to not be anxious. I want them to be so screwed up at home plate that they don't have any confidence in being in there.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of a story of one of the better hitters of all time, if not the best. That was a teammate of mine back in 1967, pitching, playing for the Fairchild Falcons. We're facing Harvey Sturkle, and I think I might have mentioned this to you, Ken. And we're in the finals of the national tournament, and Harvey Sturkle's pitching for Aurora, and I'm watching Ray, my teammate, batting third, and he's doing a dance in the batter's box. I can tell that he's not comfortable because his tunnel that he was throwing the ball in was such that Ray didn't know whether the ball was going to drop or rise, and he played with the bottom of the strike zone. So his strikes looked like balls, and his balls looked like strikes. And he struck 17 out of 21 outs. And we're supposed to be one of the better hitting teams of all time. And I see girls today, you see scores 16-14 and things like that. That's not fast pitch softball.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a low scoring football game.
Yeah.
But Ray was a mess. When he went up there his second time and his third time, he had less confidence each time he got in the box. I'm probably fooling myself in 90% of the situations, but it really helps to let go of a pitch with the confidence that you're going to have success with it. And kids are afraid to come into the zone with the ball, and they have every reason for being. You have a girl there in Chicago that's the pitching coach there at Northwestern. When she pitched for Oklahoma, she came right into the zone all the time, with movement, with her rise and drop. She wasn't 3-2 on a count because she knew how to pitch.
I believe that.
Why can't we teach kids to do that?
I believe that pitching coach at Northwestern is also a former student of Rich Balswick. Am I mistaken?
Michelle. Michelle.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that pitching coach at Northwestern is a former student of yours, is it not?
Right, for sure. From the time she was 9-10 years old, and just an awesome student. In fact, I have her picture on a wall here. She didn't have the natural athletic ability like somebody like Angelica Selden did. Angela, she was a fantastic talent. In fact, I hesitate to talk about her too much because I'll bring into question the wisdom of the coaching that she received there and all that kind of stuff. When she left college and pitched professionally, she was able to become a true pitcher because she could throw her rise ball. At UCLA, when they tried to get her to throw the rise ball, they were trying to get her rise ball to go 65 like her drop did. And if you're spinning the ball backwards, it's difficult to get to get the ball and speed and so forth. Yeah. So when she became a complete pitcher as a professional, and going into her experience there in college, she was striking out 2 batters an inning. Well, I think she only got 1 batter an inning, on average, when she was in college. Another girl that created great movement with her rise ball was a girl that pitched for University of Oregon, not too long after that. And again, I think it's important for coaches to understand that it's literally physically impossible to spin a true ball backwards, a true rise ball backwards, as fast as you can spin a ball forward.
Right.
You guys agree with that?
100%.
Yeah.
Where if it's close to being squared off, you're going to lose some speed because of where the energy is going underneath the ball. When I'm throwing a peel drop fastball, so to speak, and I don't like the term fastball like I know you guys don't either, but the forces are going directly through up and through the back of the ball as the ball is being released. So I'm a real believer in the Harvey Sturkle concept that you make your balls look like strikes and your strikes look like balls. There was a pitcher that we faced out here in California that played with the top of the strike zone that way. He'd throw high drops that looked like a ball, and they'd come down into the strike zone. So he had the ability to make most of his pitches. The only way I like a curveball, let's put it this way, too, to save some time, is that I like a curveball when it looks like a ball and it ends up being a strike, surprisingly, starting off the plate and then coming onto the plate. I never, ever took the chance in facing a left-handed batter, took the chance of throwing a curveball and trying to catch the outside corner. It wasn't a percentage pitch. When I got older, I played around a little bit with starting the ball inside off the plate. Now I had a big, big breaking curveball, where the first response of the batter was the pitch is going to be inside, and they'd stand there and take it. And as you guys know, a lot of the tunneling aspects that we're doing, I watch what it is that, these Oklahoma hitters are doing, and I can't help but recognize my read is that they take an initial read of the tunnel or the where that pitch is, and they determine rather early in the delivering of the ball whether they're going to swing it or not based on the initial position of it. And that's why you see them take a lot of low rise balls that look like balls, and the pitch ends up coming up to the knees. And they'll take it, and it looks like they just took the ball, right down the middle practically. Well, it's because of the way they're reading pitches, and so a big part of coaching is to get into the head of the hitter. What's the hitter looking for? And how are they identifying what you're throwing to them as to whether to swing at it or not? That's some interesting territory there to start teaching kids. And why can't you teach that to some degree when they're 12, 13, 14 years old?
Yep.
Yeah.
Instead, we're teaching robots to throw the ball, no imagination whatsoever, and they're being totally controlled. And the pitchers that I coached, where they realized the hitters had them lined up, and they would confess to me, Rich, I knew when I was in the fifth inning that the hitters had me lined up. They knew what I was doing, and there wasn't enough differentiation in what I was doing. She had a good changeup or whatever. And we have to have enough variety in our speed, movement, and location to keep a hitter guessing if possible. I don't want to be predictable.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
No, I was just going to say, and you don't want a pattern. You don't want to throw the same pitch and the same count every time to the same location, because that's easy to pick up too, right? Got to be surprising. Got to be, a little nutty with it.
You want the hitter, every hitter has their own personality, but it's just amazing. Well, wouldn't you guys agree? Isn't it amazing how good the hitting is?
Oh yeah. Yes.
I am impressed. And how about that home run that girl from Texas hit that went about 3 stories up on a building on the other side of the left field fence?
Yeah.
Came from what looks like a defeat to a victory.
Yeah.
Boy, what a stud she is. Golly. I almost walked away from that game, and then I fortunately saw the last home run. Anyhow, it really is amazing how some of those kids with those live bats, if she can hit the ball over 300 feet like she hit it there, she doesn't have to get all of it to get it over that 200-foot fence.
Yeah.
That makes pitching a real challenge. I need to get that pitch moving in a direction that is a contradiction to the trajectory of the bat. If I'm throwing a real good rise ball, and I saw this with hitters when I played, when they knew I was throwing a rise ball and they were looking for it, their approach to the ball was from the top. If they were sitting on my drop, you would see a little more of a launch angle swing.
Yeah.
And so as a pitch caller, I want to know what that bat is doing. I want to know whether it's at an upward angle or not. I want to know whether the bat's going under the ball or over the ball. How often do we see batters actually over the top of a rise ball and fouling it off? Even with poor spin, they tend to be underneath it. Would you guys agree?
Yes. Absolutely.
So there's space that we can go into as coaches to learn to dominate hitters again. And you're seeing flashes of it here and there where you're getting some low scoring games and so forth because the kids that are pitching know pretty well how to pitch. But the ERA of .022, like some pitchers had, 20 years ago, I think that day is over. Even if, would you guys agree? I mean,
yes,
for sure.
Yes.
So I've got to be a little more realistic in my expectations of the outcome.
Yeah.
And I try to understand if you're giving up pop flies that land in an open spot in the outfield, you're doing a good job as a pitcher.
Yep.
You're weak ground balls and they're seeing eye dogs going through the infield. Don't feel like you're going to, hang yourself by your thumbs because somebody got a base hit. They happen to find a hole.
Yeah.
And so we need to understand when to be complimentary of our pitcher.
Yeah.
Because if I get a pop fly that falls in and I lose the game, obviously I'm disappointed. But as a coach, I'm not going to rag on the pitcher. Hey, great pitch. Just, ball just went the wrong place. It's a game of chance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can do.
It's a game of.
Yeah, you can do everything right and still have a bad outcome.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. We want to teach our kids when you're working with 10, 12, 14-year-old kids, their identity is so fragile. And it's so related to performance, and you're trying to get them to evolve in such a way that who they are is not whether they throw a strike or a ball. And, there's too much pressure on my sense of well-being when that happens. And there's a difference between being fearful and apprehensive in a way. If I care about what I'm doing and I want to be successful and I'm approaching a game, I'm dealing with levels of apprehension before the game starts. I'm curious about outcome.
Yes.
And outcome is important to me. I don't want to discourage pitchers from having that, but I want them, though, that when they throw a pitch, I want them to have confidence that they're giving themselves their best chance to keep the hitter from hitting the ball hard. And I keep track of not how many hits they give up per se, but how many times are they allowing the ball to get hit hard. I can give up 10 hard hits and win a game 1-0.
Yeah.
Recognize when I'm looking in the mirror that night that all I was lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
So what's success and failure when we're working with these kids?
right. Well, Rich, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the T-shirt I'm wearing says "process over outcome."
Yes, isn't that the truth?
It is.
Yeah.
You guys have a great attitude, and as you can tell, I start wandering around. You get old and you talk too much, but
Oh no,
That's all right. We love it.
Yeah, that's what we're
anything
here
coming
for.
out of your mouth. Yeah.
I want to try. In fact, I sometimes play with that Wicks Wednesday. I don't do it really consistently, but I'm really thinking seriously of getting something started on Facebook where I want to try to set it up in such a way that if people want to pay me some money, they can. But I don't want to make a demand out of it. If people like yourself like what you're hearing something that's unique, why not hit the credit card and give me $20?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
But what I really want, though, is the message to get out there.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys want.
Right.
Absolutely. 100%.
And would you agree, Jay, that one of the more frustrating things is that when you get a freshman in that can throw the ball hard but doesn't know how to pitch, the challenges of unraveling that to some degree is something that you really need to be careful of.
It is, and it's a process, right? It's like we can't overhaul everybody. We've just got to make some adjustments that are going to help that kid be a little bit better. And every year, just little adjustments. You know, I have a junior right now who, when I first got her, it was like, wow, like, okay, that's gonna be a problem. And so we just started with basic little things, and every year we've just added a little bit. And so she still feels comfortable with what she's doing, but her spins have gotten better. She understands her mechanics better. And to me, that's the goal, right? My goal as a pitching coach there, Rich, is to make every kid there better, whether it's my number 1 or my number 5. I just want to make all of them better.
Isn't that the truth? It really is. Those are the satisfying things about coaches. It's not wins and losses. It's learning how to achieve consistency with a skill and develop an understanding of what you're actually causing and why you're causing it to create confusion in the batter, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Rich, I have one more question for you. And we told you it'd be an hour. We're already a little bit past that.
Yeah, well, you can splice this and get rid of all of my.
No way. Anything coming out of your mouth is gold, buddy. Yep. So we're not cutting any of that.
Yeah.
If I'm throwing the ball 60 miles an hour compared to somebody that's throwing 70, I need more differentiation throwing 60 than I do 70, if that makes sense.
Yep, for sure.
You know, so there's just so many variables, you know, that people don't see. I watch what goes on in these games. I'm fascinated when I watch these better teams face against each other. I'm looking at that batter, and I'm trying to get into that batter's head. You know, what is she thinking? What is she looking for? And I can't help but think that when you see some of these balls get hit the way they do, that it had to be a pitch that hitter was hunting for. I don't want to guess, I want to hunt. And there's a way in which if I study pitchers, there's not many pitchers out there that I can't learn from. You know, just in general, how they approach things. And it's hard to get hitters to think that way. I can remember when I was coaching a team, one of the questions that you were going to ask me was whether ever coached coach softball. Well, I coached a men's fast pitch team. It was sponsored by Lucasfilm back in 1985, 86, in that round there for a couple of years.
Oh, that's fun.
And Peter Brown was my pitcher. And I was in my late 40s, still trying to be competitive, you know, and I'd have my first baseman whispering at me, "Rich, leave Peter in." Actually, to be honest with you, that didn't happen very often. I'd like to think that I was being pretty objective, but I certainly had to. And again, I wouldn't claim to be, you know, an excellent coach in terms of, you know, backing up bases and knowing where you have to be every time and so forth. I did know enough to know that when we weren't doing it right, we need to learn how to do it. The game is being well played by a lot of teams and a lot of coaches, and people like yourself. You know, I mean, there's no accident that Patty Gasso is as effective as she is with her kids. They live with a freedom of fear of failure and so forth. And of course, the direction the game is going is that it's. In fact, I just read something a few days ago, just a couple of days ago, is that they're thinking in terms of creating a 5-year window. Have you guys read about some of that stuff?
Yeah.
They have a window between the time they're 19 and 24. If you're older than 24, your chances of playing are totally eliminated. So there's a lot of games being played with the eligibility rules and things like that. And, there's pluses and minuses of these portals and things like that. There's a balance that's been lost in the game. And I don't know what the answer is. Do you guys have any answers?
Unfortunately, no. And I think, I don't know. It's it is what it is at this point. I think like you said, it's good and bad, and it's the game is still growing. I don't know, Rich. Every day I back and forth with it.
You agree with this, though, that as pitching coaches, we need to help our kids understand their limitations without knocking them down, but and to understand what level they need to be playing.
Yeah.
Not going to end up at Oklahoma. And it's really important that some kids are just never going to throw the ball faster than 55. I think.
Yeah.
And so, it's dumb to be pushing kids into situations, to boost your own ego because they're playing, they're playing for UCLA or whatever. We've got to help kids as they're approaching their sophomore and junior and senior year, what their expectations start needing to be. And we need to be a father to them in some way and build that relationship where they're not feeling down on themselves. Because there's nothing worse than trying to compete when you're in over your head.
Yeah. Well, Rich, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the time you gave us today. This has been really fun. You're a legend, as we keep saying, and it's been so great to tap into that wisdom and to really dig in deep on the rise ball, especially. We know you're a specialist in that. So again, just thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rich. I mean, it's an honor to talk to you and pick your brains some more. Like I said, I know Ken feels the same way. You've been a mentor to me and to Ken and to many others out there who have kind of taken on this pitching role. So thank you not only for what you've done for us, but for all the other people.
Tell your people that, to email me or text me or whatever. I'd be happy to talk to them. I'm going to be throwing some ideas out there being shared today. But I really believe that, there needs to be some things out there that expose the difficulty of changing kids after they've been pitching a certain way for 5-7 years. And then there's a way in which we need to start turning some of that around at the beginning, et cetera.
Yep. So how do they get a hold of you if they want to email or text you or whatever?
Well, what's your email?
They can go Rich at Balswick Fast Pitch. They can also go richbalswick@gmail.com.
And we'll put it in the notes too of this for people to do it. So if they want to get a hold of you.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to, well, let me bounce this off of you guys. You don't need to obviously pass this on to other people. But out of respect for my relationship, especially with Mike Muleisen, Mike has shared a lot of inside information with me that has helped me with my own understanding, especially in athletic movement in general. And he has some pretty strong ideas, as you guys probably know. But I don't want to just give things away. And yet there's a part of me that would like to use that window in Facebook, where if people don't have 2 cents to their name, could actually learn enough about pitching, to become a coach and or become a pitcher if they would pay attention to some of these basic fundamentals and so forth. Because I'm really not looking for money today. I'm looking for the game to be changed. Obviously, we can only influence so much, but what you guys are doing are just so important. And and I regret in a way that Mike and I and Rick Pauly never were able to fully pull something together with Fast Pitch Foundations. I think you guys can see the potential of all of that.
Yes.
But that's all water over the dam. But there's still no reason why some of us can't put our heads together and promote. I don't think the same way Rick does. I don't think the same way Mike does. And I'm sure there's some things that you guys are teaching today as some key points that I'm totally ignorant to. Well, all of that to me is okay. In general, you understand what you're doing and why, and you're producing quality, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's really that's what we want to have happen. So people like yourself, Jay, as a coach at a college level, you don't have this issue of such horrible habits that are just not even close. And there's some people out there teaching things that are so bass-ackwards, it's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah, I hear you.
all right, guys. Thank you much. Let's try to stay a little closer together through the years and say a little prayer that the good Lord let me hang around for a while.
Yeah. Yep.
You are in my
Definitely
prayers,
are.
buddy.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you so much.
All righty. Well, that's it for us this week. Thanks to all of you for listening and the kind words you've been sharing with us. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to give us a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast on your social media channels. Make sure you never miss an episode by following us on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're so inclined, you can also leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts to help more people find us. On behalf of the From the Coach's Mouth podcast, have a great rest of your week and weekend.